I was already exhausted when the last order came in, an unusually expensive bouquet of white lilies wrapped in velvet paper. My manager waved it at me with a tired smile. Villa number 12, Hillcrest Lane. Last delivery. Then go home to your mom. My mom. The reason I worked 2 jobs, the reason I ran around the city delivering flowers instead of finishing my degree. Her treatment wasn't cheap, and every rupee mattered. I tucked the bouquet under my arm, zipped my jacket, and headed into the cold evening. Hillcrest Lane was quiet, too quiet. A long row of tall trees lined the street like silent guards. The houses were spaced far apart, each with glowing windows that made the darkness feel heavier. When I reached Villa number 12, warm golden lights shone through the curtains, and for a second, it felt like walking toward a storybook house. I climbed the steps, adjusted the bouquet in my hand, and rang the bell. The door didn't open immediately. I heard faint footsteps, then the click of a lock. The door swung open, and I forgot how to breathe. A woman stood there in a silk robe, loosely tied at the waist, her hair dripping water as if she'd stepped right out of the shower. She looked around 34, sharp cheekbones, soft mouth, eyes so intense they felt like they were looking straight through the walls I'd built around myself. She blinked at me in surprise, then her lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. "Flowers?" she asked, voice low and velvety. I nodded, though my hands were shaking slightly. But she didn't reach for the bouquet. Instead, she leaned on the doorway, shoulder brushing against the frame, robe shifting with the movement. Water slid down the side of her neck, disappearing beneath the fabric. And then she whispered, so softly I almost thought I imagined it. "If you want to peel me off, I'm right here. Kiss me if you want." My breath hitched. I froze. My brain stopped functioning. My heart forgot its rhythm. For a full second, all I could do was stare at her like an idiot holding a bouquet hostage. She let out a soft, amused laugh, the kind that melts your spine. "Relax," she murmured, tilting her head. "I'm joking, unless you don't want me to." Her voice wrapped around the air, warm and teasing, and the space between us suddenly felt electric. Heavy, like something was humming, waiting to happen. I swallowed, unable to form words. My hands felt clumsy, useless. The bouquet nearly slipped. She noticed. "Hey," she said gently, eyes softening. "You're cold." She stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come inside." I hesitated. Every rule of my job said don't step into strangers' houses. Every survival instinct said run. But something about her, her loneliness, her warmth, the way her robe clung to her, I couldn't explain it, it pulled me in.
Just for a minute, I told myself.
I stepped inside. The warmth of the villa settled over my skin like a blanket. The air smelled like jasmine and something faintly woody. The living room was beautiful but empty. Like someone designed it but didn't live in it. Lonely. That was the word that came to mind. She walked ahead of me, tying her robe a little tighter, though not tight enough to stop my imagination from running wild. She turned slightly, giving me a clearer look at her face. "Elena," she said suddenly, offering her name like a secret. "Ava," I replied, voice softer than usual. She smiled, small, sincere. "Pretty name." Heat rushed to my cheeks, and I quickly looked away, pretending to admire the decor. That's when something on the wall caught my eye. A framed photograph. Elena stood in it, smiling, but not like she smiled at me. Her smile was smaller, guarded. Next to her was a tall man with his hand wrapped tightly around her waist. Too tightly. Possessively. The glass on the frame was cracked, almost shattered over his face. I stepped closer, staring. Behind me, Elena's voice dropped, lower, darker. "Ava, don't touch that." And suddenly the warm villa didn't feel warm anymore. The air shifted. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And I hadn't even delivered the flowers yet. Elena moved away from the cracked photo quickly, almost too quickly, as if she could shield me from it with her body alone. Without another word, she brushed past me and walked toward the kitchen. I stood frozen for a moment, still staring at the photo, the broken glass glinting like something violent had happened long before I arrived. Before I could ask anything, she called softly, "Ava? Come sit. You look like you're freezing." Her tone had shifted again, gentle, controlled, warm on the surface, but hiding something trembling underneath. I followed her voice. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the soft glow of under-cabinet lights. Elena moved with an elegance that didn't seem real, like she'd been trained to hide her nerves behind perfect posture. She filled a kettle with water, turned it on, then reached for a thick cream-colored blanket draped over a chair. Without asking, she stepped close, closer than anyone had ever stood near me, and wrapped the blanket around my shoulders. Her fingers brushed my neck. My breath caught. "There," she murmured. "You're warmer already." I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. The kettle whistled. She poured the water into 2 delicate cups, her movements fluid but tense, as if her mind was far away. When she handed me the cup, her hand lingered just a second too long against mine. "Thank you," I said finally. She smiled, small, tired, but sincere. "It's the least I can do after, well, surprising you at the door." That was definitely surprising. I managed, cheeks burning. Her laugh was soft, short, as if she didn't remember the last time she had laughed. We sat across from each other at the marble kitchen island, the steam rising between us like a thin veil. For a moment, silence settled, awkward yet strangely comfortable. "So," I said, glancing at the bouquet still untouched on the counter, who are these for?" She looked at the flowers for a long time before answering. "For me." I blinked. "You ordered them for yourself?" Her eyes flickered with something. Shame? Sadness? It sounds pathetic, doesn't it? "No," I said quickly. "Not at all." Her lips pressed into a line. "I haven't received flowers from anyone in years. Not real ones. Not ones that meant something." "Why not?" I asked gently, though the cracked photo already whispered part of the answer. Her gaze drifted toward the living room as if checking whether someone else was listening. "Because people don't stay. Or they stay for the wrong reasons. Sometimes it's better to give yourself what no one else will." My heart tightened. There was a loneliness in her voice, so deep it felt like it echoed inside my chest. She wasn't just alone. She was wounded, carrying something heavy she wasn't sure she could set down. I sipped my tea to steady myself. I didn't know why I cared so much. Maybe it was the way her eyes flickered with unspoken storms. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, like she recognized something unspoken, something I spent years hiding. "Has anyone ever looked at you?" she said suddenly, leaning forward, "like you were the only thing in the room?" The question hit me like a warm hand pressed to my heartbeat. "No," I whispered. "No one ever has." Her eyes softened, almost painfully. "Then those people don't know what they're missing." Heat rushed to my neck. She stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. Her robe slipped just a little at the shoulder, revealing more of her collarbone, the sheen of water still clinging to her skin. For one wild moment, I thought she was going to touch my face. Instead, she stopped, like something invisible pulled her back. Her expression changed, tightening with conflict. She took 2 steps away, arms folding as if she were holding herself together. "You should leave," she said quietly, voice cracking at the edges. "Before I ruin you too." "Ruin me, how?" I murmured. But she didn't answer. Her hands trembled slightly, the robe tied too tightly now. She seemed suddenly terrified, not of me, but of herself. As if she believed letting anyone close was dangerous. Before I could ask again, thunder rolled across the sky. The first heavy drops of rain slammed against the windows. A storm had come out of nowhere. I stood up. Maybe I should go before it gets worse.
No.
The word was sharp, desperate. Elena reached out instinctively and grabbed my wrist. Not forcefully, not painfully, just gently, as if she were afraid I'd disappear if she didn't hold on. Her thumb rested against the inside of my wrist, right on my pulse. I knew she felt it racing. "Not yet," she whispered.
Please.
Stay until the rain stops. I swallowed hard. Her eyes were wide, vulnerable, begging in a way I didn't understand. All right, I whispered. Something fragile passed between us, an unspoken agreement, a shared loneliness, a pull neither of us had words for. We stood there in the quiet kitchen, the rain pounding harder, the lights flickering slightly. She let go of my wrist slowly, fingers trailing last. The air tightened with something neither of us dared to name. Then, a loud crash. Upstairs. It wasn't thunder. It was something or someone inside the house. Elena's face drained of color instantly. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Just stared upward with terror in her eyes. Ava, she whispered, voice trembling. He's back. Elena didn't wait for another sound. The moment the crash echoed from upstairs, she bolted toward the staircase, her robe fluttering behind her like a shadow trying to keep up. I hesitated only a second before following her, my heartbeat thundering louder than the storm outside. The house felt colder as we climbed, like whatever had happened up there had sucked the warmth right out of the walls. Elena? I called softly. She didn't answer. Her steps were frantic, unsteady. When we reached the hallway, the first thing I noticed was the wind. It rushed in violently from a half-open window at the far end, whipping the curtains like angry ghosts. The vase lay shattered on the wooden floor, pieces scattered everywhere, water spreading like a dark stain. Elena stopped in her tracks, her whole body trembling.
He was here, she breathed.
I stepped closer. The window might have just. No, she snapped, panic sharpening her voice. Then she covered her mouth, realizing she'd frightened me. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I know when he comes. She bent down, trying to gather the broken pieces with shaking hands. Her breath came too fast, like she was drowning in memories instead of air. I knelt beside her instinctively. Stop, I whispered, touching her wrist gently. You'll cut yourself. She froze. Her eyes lifted to mine, raw, terrified, defeated. Something inside me cracked. Slowly, I placed my hand over hers and guided her up to her feet. Talk to me, I said softly. Please. She looked away, blinking hard. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could hide it. Her voice broke. I used to live with a man. He controlled everything. My clothes, my friends, where I went, how I spoke, who I smiled at. He convinced me I couldn't survive without him. Her hands curled into fists. And when I finally left, he started showing up here. Sometimes drunk. Sometimes angry. Sometimes silent. But always reminding me he could take everything away again. A shiver ran down her spine so violently she hugged herself. I thought I locked everything, she whispered. I thought I was careful. The urge to protect her rose so fiercely in me it nearly scared me. Without thinking, I stepped forward and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She stiffened at first, as if she wasn't used to being touched gently. Then slowly, hesitantly, she leaned into me. Her head rested against my shoulder, her breath shaking against my collarbone. It felt intimate, but not in the way that demanded anything. It felt like being chosen as someone's safe place. And that feeling was terrifyingly beautiful. I'm here, I murmured, not even sure where the words came from. She closed her eyes. I haven't been touched with kindness in years. My chest tightened painfully. How long had she lived like this? How long had she been carrying this fear alone? After a moment, she pulled back slightly, wiping her tears. There's something I want to show you, she said. She led me to a small shelf near the hallway wall. A stack of pictures lay inside a drawer, one she must have hidden yet couldn't bring herself to destroy. She placed them gently in my hands. In each photo, Elena was smiling, but her eyes weren't. A man stood beside her, tall, broad-shouldered, handsome in a cruel way. His arm wrapped around her waist, fingers digging slightly into her skin. Even in a photograph, the grip looked suffocating. He always held me like he was claiming something, she whispered. Not loving me. She pointed to the last picture. His hand wasn't around her waist this time. It was gripping her wrist. Hard. I left him, she whispered. But he still believes he owns me. Something inside me twisted, a mix of anger, protectiveness, and something deeper I didn't want to name yet. She wasn't someone I knew for long. She wasn't someone I should get attached to. But I was. And I couldn't stop it. "Elena," I said softly, "you're not alone anymore." Her breath hitched. She looked at me like those words were impossible, like they didn't belong to someone like her. Her fingers rose and lightly brushed my cheek, almost reverently, almost afraid. "You're dangerous, Ava," she whispered. "You make me forget the damage he caused." She stepped even closer, lifting my chin with trembling fingers. Her face was inches from mine, her breath warm. Her lips parted slightly as if forming a question neither of us could answer. The world shrank until it was only her eyes and my heartbeat. She leaned in. My breath stopped. Her nose brushed mine. But right before her lips touched mine, she flinched and stepped back sharply, shaking her head. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't do that to you." My heart ached, but I understood. This was more than attraction. This was someone trying not to break something fragile. Before I could say anything, a sound tore through the house.
Boom, boom, boom.
The front door. Someone was knocking. No, pounding. Elena's entire body froze. Her eyes widened with pure terror. "He found me." The pounding on the front door shook the walls. Elena's breath hitched, sharp, panicked, brittle. She backed away from the staircase, as if the sound itself could touch her. "Come," she whispered, grabbing my hand with cold fingers. "We have to hide." I didn't question her, not when terror carved itself so clearly across her face. She pulled me into a small storage room tucked behind the staircase. It was dark, no windows, only the faint smell of old books and lavender cleaner. She closed the door behind us and pressed her back against it, breathing hard. The knocking grew louder.
Boom, boom, boom.
"If it's him," she whispered shakily, "don't make a sound." Her voice was trembling so badly I could barely understand the words. The room was pitch black. I could only feel her breath, her shaking, her fear. I reached out instinctively, finding her arm, then her shoulder, and then pulling her gently toward me.
She didn't resist.
She collapsed into my arms like someone who had been holding herself up for too long. Her heartbeat raced against my chest, wild and desperate. I wrapped both arms around her, holding her tighter, grounding her, trying to steady the trembling of her body. My cheek brushed her hair. "It's okay," I whispered, not knowing if it was true. "I'm here." We stayed like that, her fists clenched in my shirt, my hand stroking her back in slow circles as the pounding continued. Then suddenly, silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, suspicious, waiting. We didn't move. Not for seconds. Not for minutes. Only when Elena's breath finally slowed did she whisper, "He's gone, I think." I pushed the door open a crack. The hallway was empty. No shadow. No footsteps. No broken locks. The front door stood untouched, only rainwater dripping from the edges of the porch. We stepped out. Elena lasted barely 3 seconds before her knees buckled. She sank onto the floor and pressed her hands to her face. Her shoulders shook violently. I knelt beside her and cupped her cheeks gently, wiping her tears with my thumbs. "You're safe," I whispered. "With me, you are safe." She cried harder. Quiet, broken sobs that came from somewhere deep, somewhere long neglected. I pulled her closer, letting her lean into me. Her tears dampened my shoulder, and I didn't care. When she finally managed to breathe again, she whispered, "I'm sorry you had to see me like this." "I'm not," I said softly. She looked up, eyes red, mascara faintly smudged, but still breathtaking. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I tried to live the life they wanted. With him. With men. With expectations and cages and lies." Her voice cracked. "But you," she swallowed hard. "You woke something I buried so deep I thought it died." My heart pounded. "Elena." She shook her head slowly, as if confessing something she'd never dared say aloud. "I'm not straight, Ava." I never was. I just never let myself want what I really wanted. She looked at me with a pain so fragile it made my chest ache. And when you walked in today, I felt it. All of it. Everything I used to hide. I exhaled shakily. I've always liked women, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. But I never acted on it. Never even told anyone. Her expression softened, something aching and intimate blooming between us. Ava, she whispered, come here. She lifted a trembling hand and brushed her fingers against my cheek, light, reverent, as if afraid I'd disappear. Her touch trailed to my jaw, her thumb grazing the corner of my mouth. If tonight was different, she breathed, I would have kissed you the moment you walked in. My breath caught, every part of me pulling toward her without permission. The world shrank to her hand on my face, the warmth of her breath, the closeness of her lips. Elena, I whispered, leaning in without meaning to. But before I could finish, the sky tore open with a violent crack of thunder. The entire house shook. Then, everything went black. The sudden darkness was suffocating. Elena, I called softly. I'm here, she whispered, gripping my hand tightly. But then, footsteps. Inside the house.
Slow.
Deliberate. Not ours. My blood turned to ice. Elena, I breathed. Someone's in here. The footsteps came again, soft, slow, unmistakably inside the house. Ava's breath caught. Elena's fingers clutched the fabric of her sleeve, as if she were holding on for life itself. Stay behind me, Ava whispered, even though she wasn't sure what she would do if something was actually there. But Elena shook her head, voice trembling. No, I'm not letting you face anything alone. They stepped out of the living room together, hands tightly interlaced in the darkness. Every shadow looked alive. Every creak felt like a warning. The storm had finally begun to ease outside, but inside the house, the tension only thickened. They checked the hallway, the kitchen, the stairwell. Nothing. Only the trembling echo of fear remained and Elena's uneven breathing. When they reached the last room, a spare bedroom, it was empty too. The moment they realized they were alone, Elena's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, her hands covering her face as her entire body shook. Ava immediately knelt, pulling her close. Elena, it's okay. We're alone. You're safe. No. Elena sobbed, her voice breaking. I can't keep living like this. Every sound feels like him. Every shadow looks like him. I hate that he still owns pieces of me. Ava gathered her into her arms, holding her against her chest. Elena buried her face into Ava's shoulder, hot tears soaking through the fabric. Why did you come back? Elena whispered, voice raw. I told you not to. I didn't want you dragged into my mess. I didn't want you destroyed because of me. Ava swallowed hard. The truth rose up inside her like something that had been waiting its whole life to escape. I came back because I wanted to, she said softly. Because something about you, it pulled me. I'm not afraid of what you carry, Elena. I'm afraid of losing you. Elena froze, like the words pierced through her fear and reached a part of her that had been numb for years. Slowly, she lifted her face. Her eyes, wet, trembling, searched Ava's expression as if trying to understand why someone would choose her after everything. Ava, she whispered, almost in disbelief. You don't know how broken I am. Then let me be the person who doesn't run from your broken pieces, Ava answered. Elena's breath hitched. She leaned forward, her forehead pressing against Ava's, softly, hesitantly. They stayed like that, breathing each other in, their lips so close that the warmth between them felt like a trembling promise. Elena's fingers gently cupped Ava's jaw, thumb brushing along her cheek with a tenderness she hadn't shown anyone in years. You make me forget, Elena whispered, voice shaking. For the first time in so long. I don't feel trapped. I don't feel small. I don't feel like prey. You make me feel. She couldn't finish. Her lips hovered a breath away from Ava's. The air pulsed. Their hearts beat against each other. Ava closed her eyes, leaning in just enough for hope to tremble between them. But then Elena suddenly pulled back, tears spilling again. "I can't," she choked out. "I can't ruin something so innocent. You deserve light, Ava. And I'm made of shadows." Ava reached up and gently wiped a tear from Elena's cheek. "Maybe you don't need to deserve love," she said softly. "Maybe you just need someone who stays." Elena looked at her like the words hurt and healed her at the same time. "You stayed," she whispered, voice barely audible. "All night you stayed." Ava brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I would stay longer if you ask." A tiny, sad smile curved Elena's lips, one that said she wanted to believe every word but didn't trust herself to. "Thank you," she murmured, "for tonight. For letting me breathe without fear, even for a moment." Ava rested her hand over Elena's. "I'll always choose your moments, Elena." Outside, the storm finally broke. Raindrops softened, thunder faded, and for a second, everything felt calm. Elena exhaled shakily, leaning her head against Ava's shoulder again. They sat together on the floor, wrapped in silence that felt intimate, fragile, and full of unspoken longing. Ava gently stroked her hair, her heart beating like it wanted to reach out of her chest and wrap itself around the woman trembling in her arms. Elena whispered, almost dreamlike, "If tonight were different, if I weren't this scared, I would have kissed you the moment you walked in with those flowers." Ava's breath caught. "And if you ever do," she whispered back, "I won't stop you." Elena's eyes fluttered closed, a tear escaping despite her smile. They sat there until the quiet felt safe, until Elena's breathing steadied, until Ava felt her own heart settle into a rhythm that matched Elena's. But peace, like everything else that night, didn't last long. Elena's phone buzzed on the floor beside them. At first, she didn't reach for it. Then the screen lit up, bright, sharp, out of place in the dark room. Ava glanced at the display just as Elena picked it up. The message was short.
Cold.
Delivered at 2:13 a.m. "I know she's in your house." Elena's entire body stiffened. Her breath stopped midair. The phone slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. Ava stared at the message, her heartbeat slamming in her chest. "Elena," she whispered, voice trembling. "He knows." Elena looked at her, panic rising like a wave ready to swallow them both. And just like that, the night shifted from fear to danger. Elena's face drained of all color as she picked the phone up from the floor. Her hands trembled so violently that the screen shook. She turned it toward Ava. Ava's heart dropped. "I know she's in your house." 7 words that sliced through every fragile piece of safety they had built that night. Ava's breath hitched. "Elena, we have to go. Please. Come with me. We can leave right now." But Elena didn't move. Her shoulders lifted once, barely, before sinking in resignation. A quiet, hollow sound escaped her throat. "Running means he wins again," she whispered, as if saying it out loud forced her to admit a truth she hated. Ava shook her head, grabbing her hands.
No.
"Staying here is what he wants. You don't owe him your fear." Elena looked at her with eyes full of storms older than tonight, older than Ava, older than every bruise life had given her. "Ava, you don't understand the kind of man he is." "Then let me understand," Ava begged. "Let me protect you." Elena's expression softened, painfully. She lifted one hand and cupped Ava's cheek, her fingers cold, gentle, trembling. "You already did," she whispered. Ava's chest tightened. Tears burned her eyes. She leaned into Elena's hand like her entire soul was craving warmth. "Elena, don't do this. I'm not leaving you here." Elena swallowed hard, her voice breaking into a whisper made of glass. "If you stay, he will hurt you to punish me. And I cannot," her voice cracked. "I cannot survive being the reason someone like you gets hurt." Ava felt her heart twist, raw and aching. "Someone like me?" Elena smiled through her tears, her thumb brushing across Ava's skin with a tenderness that felt like goodbye. "Someone kind, someone brave, someone who made me feel safe for the first time in years." Ava's breath came out shaky. She leaned her forehead against Elena's, the closeness filling her with warmth and agony. "I want more time," Ava whispered. "I want one more night, one more hour, one more minute with you." Elena closed her eyes as if the pain of hearing that was too much. "You gave me something I thought I lost," she said. "Hope." Before Ava could speak, Elena lifted her other hand and gently pulled Ava closer. She pressed a soft, trembling kiss to the center of Ava's forehead, a kiss that carried every emotion she was too scared to give anywhere else. Ava broke. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her hands gripping Elena's robe, holding on like she could stop the world from pulling them apart. "Elena, please, please don't make me leave." Elena's own tears finally fell, silent and uncontrollable. She pulled Ava into an embrace that felt desperate, fierce, unforgettable. Their hearts pressed together, beating in a rhythm that said everything they hadn't dared to speak aloud. They held each other for a long time. Too long. Not long enough. When Elena finally pulled back, she rested her forehead against Ava's one more time, breathing her in like a final prayer. "If we continue," she whispered, voice shattering, "he will find ways to hurt you. And I won't survive hurting someone I care about." Ava felt her knees weaken. "I care about you too," Elena smiled, a soft, broken curve of her lips that looked like goodbye dressed as love. "I know." The storm had passed, but its quiet aftermath felt heavier than thunder. Elena's fingers slipped from Ava's hand slowly, painfully, as if dragging pieces of her heart with them. "Ava," she said gently, "go home. Please. Let tonight be something beautiful, not something dangerous." Ava shook her head, tears falling silently. "I don't want beautiful. I want you." Elena looked away, her chin trembling. "And if life were kinder, you would have had me." Those words crushed Ava. But she could see the fear in Elena's eyes, the terror that wasn't for herself, but for Ava. A love that never fully bloomed but already hurt like loss. With lead in her legs and fire in her throat, Ava finally stood. Every step toward the door felt like stepping out of something sacred. Elena followed her silently, stopping a few feet away, as if getting closer would weaken her resolve. Ava reached for the doorknob, her hand trembling. She turned around one last time. Elena stood in the dim hallway, arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to keep her own heart from falling apart. Tears shone under her lashes. She looked like a woman drowning in a goodbye she didn't want to give. Ava's voice broke. "If this is really goodbye, tell me something real." Elena nodded once. Her lips parted. Her voice was barely a breath. "If we met at a different time, I would have loved you loudly." Ava's chest caved in. That was it. The moment her heart cracked clean in two. She opened the door. The early morning sun spilled through, warm and unfairly peaceful. Birds had begun to chirp somewhere distant, unaware of the two souls breaking quietly inside the silent house. Ava stepped out. She looked back one last time. The doorway was empty. Elena was gone, already pulling away, already disappearing into a life she never chose but couldn't escape. Ava whispered into the morning air. "I delivered flowers that day, but she delivered something deeper, something I will carry forever." And then she walked away, carrying the weight of a love that bloomed in a single night and ended before it even had the chance to begin.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Your feedback is very valuable and will help us improve. May I kindly ask which country you are joining us from?